Now, how does that work? It's just like Dutch Royal Shell, ExxonMobil, BP. When you go to a smart growth conference or you go to a UN climate change conference and you look at their publications, literally half the ads in environmental magazines are oil companies. And I tracked it back. The majority stockholder in Occidental Petroleum, one of the largest, it's a top 20 oil company, is owned by Al Gore. He's involved specifically cutting down rainforest. So is Maurice Strong, the big UN chieftain, when he's not ripping people off for oil for food programs with the UN. And they, on record, are behind the Copenhagen, Denmark global tax, which would be run, we now have the official treaty that they were unable to ram through, thank God, that says the IMF and World Bank will now act as the global government and they will tax you and they will arbitrarily, with an unelected board, decide how they're going to tax you. Now, think about that. Think about that for a long time. So oil companies and banks that own them predominantly are behind the fake environmentalism. And then the insurance companies, mainly medical, themselves subsidiaries of large central banks, they are behind the healthcare reform. In fact, here's a graph right here. This is just one of the graphs. That's from Yahoo Finance. That's one of the big stock market indexes. Look at the all-time highs. And as soon as it came out in the last 2 weeks that they were going to be able to pass this bill the way it's written, look at what happened. For people that are watching us at prisonplanet.tv, we simulcast on the radio, for those that don't know, at prisonplanet.tv. It's a full television program here, so we can actually show the articles and documents. And you can go through every major stock index that we have linked in this article at Op-Ed News. Health insurance company stock prices say it all. They are behind it. This is a ripoff. Look, you have a banker bailout 14 months ago in last October, October 3rd. $700 billion revolving door of credit. They've gone to that window to the tune of $23.7 trillion. And those numbers are 4 months old. They haven't released the numbers in 4 months. $23.7 trillion pumped out there to the private banks. That's more than double the GDP of the country in less than a year. And October 3rd, they said, we have to have this bailout or the banks will fail, we'll have a depression. And Paulson told Congress we'll have martial law. That's on record. Okay? Then October 4th, on Saturday, they say we're not going to spend it on mortgages to unfreeze that market, and we're not going to say where the money went. So, see, they tell you the banker bailout is to help you. Day one, it's a bait and switch. They tell you it's environmental rules. Even if you believe that our carbon dioxide's bad, it's a scam, a global tax, nothing to do with carbon dioxide. And it's the same thing with the insurance. It's written by the insurance companies. Our government and most of the major governments of the planet are controlled by offshore central banks who control the issuance of currency and credit. They have unlimited fiat currency that they can produce in the form of loans. And so, of course, they've taken over the planet. And they control our government. And whether you have Democrats in or Republicans in, it doesn't matter. Any major legislation that passes is going to be a scam. It doesn't matter if it's at the UN global government level with the Copenhagen greenhouse gas tax system. It doesn't matter if it's the banker bailout. It doesn't matter if it's government-run health care. It doesn't matter what issue it is. It's going to be a ripoff. Even if you are a socialist or a communist and you want, quote, free health care, i.e. steal somebody else's money for yourself, even if you believe that's moral and good, you have to be against the health care bill because it's nothing but a cutting of services and the quality of services. Again, Obama, in this bill, raises a host of new taxes, something he promised not to do. He only said he'd raise taxes on people making over $125,000 a year. Before you email me and say it was $250,000, that was in households, a man and woman. It's individuals over $125,000. So before you get suckered into this, you should read the legislation and understand Dennis Kucinich, Howard Dean, they're all against this legislation. And why? They've now had a chance to read the bill. They raise your taxes, but then give you less services. Yes, there's 25, 30 million people who will now supposedly get some free health care. But working class people, middle class, everybody will now have 2.5 to 5% of their paycheck taken out on top of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, on top of the regular withholding. Your employers have to match that. And then you have to separately go buy your own insurance. And if you don't, it's huge fines and then 5 years in prison and then $250,000 fines. A total scam. And the federal government comes in with the HMOs and insurance companies and gives them liability protection, just like they gave 30-something years ago liability protection for drug makers who make dangerous vaccines. You know, you can't sue vaccine makers when you get brain damaged or sterilized or get cancer from a vaccine. There's a federal vaccine damage fund set up in the 1970s, and they quietly pay you off. You can't go through the regular courts. Well, that's the new system here, where the government decides what tests you can get, where the government decides what surgeries you can get. And see, the insurance companies have already done this with what they call capitation. And they do it in dentistry, they do it in MD work, in hospital work, across the medical field. They have hospitals and dental offices that are just capitation. And they put people in these big pools of HMOs where you get a lower standard of care. Because big deals are made with those medical institutions and the insurance companies to basically just take on a group of contracts and provide care, but at a lower standard. And so that's all that's happening here. We had the best health care in the world, some of the most inexpensive health care in the world just 40 years ago. But government dumped trillions of dollars in, partially subsidizing through socialism. And the more money they dumped in to the system, the more waste, the more corruption. And the insurance companies and banks and big medical firms lobbied for this. So all you so-called Democrats and liberals, you got suckered again. And that's why this bill is probably going to pass, because the establishment wants it. The lobbyists across the board want it. And that's why in the last 2 weeks, as it became more and more of a sure thing that government takeover of healthcare was going to become a reality, that's why the stock prices of these companies have exploded. They have absolutely exploded because now the insurance companies are going to have a law in place where people are going to go to jail, people are going to have their checks withheld. See, they have all these good excuses for this. Oh, we keep money out of your check now for child support. Oh, we keep money out of your check now for fines and fees and tickets or DWIs you have. Oh, the IRS just takes money out of your check. See, everything is going to be about garnishing your wages. And under the new system, they're going to garnish your wages under the environmental rules they're passing. They're going to garnish your wages under the expansion of socialized health care. They're going to garnish your wages for anything and everything. Oh, you get more than 3 tickets in 2 years in most states. The feds push for this under international treaties. Oh, now you've got points on your license. It's going to cost more. Everything is about imposing taxes and fees and regulations on everyone to bankrupt society. Government and the big monolithic corporations that control them want you bankrupt. They want you destitute, because then you'll go on the government dole, and that will run up even greater debts to the private banks that created this money literally out of nothing. And this is how the scam works. This is how the fraud works. Any big pool of money that gets created and sucked out of the taxpayer is never going to be sent to the people, even if you believe in wealth redistribution. In every case, in communist China and Fidel's Cuba and Hitler's Germany, that you have a command and control government that has high taxes and regulations, the money gets stolen and given to the kingpins that run the society. That is the simple laws of how government and these systems operate. So, continuing here with this information. Key article, again, at Op-Ed News. We have it linked up at Infowars.com. Health insurance company stock prices say it all. If you want to know how the insurance companies are viewing the legislation, just follow their stock prices. Care for America Act in November, H.R. 3962, would put the government in the role of accelerating the privatization of health care. In H.R. 3962, the government is requiring at least 21 million Americans to buy private health insurance from the very industry that causes costs to be so high, which will result in at least $70 billion in new annual revenue, much of which is coming from taxpayers. This inevitably, see, it's a tax to them, and the government's going to take money out of your check. That's double tax. That's what the New World Order is. It's where private corporations use government and force you to pay them through government.